been asked to say a few words about the global shift in power in politics. It's a hotly debated topic these days. There's a great deal of speculation about whether or when China will displace the United States as the dominant global power, perhaps along with India, which, if true, would mean that the global system would be returning to something like what it was before the European conquests, primarily from the 17th century. Just to illustrate the mood with an unscientific but probably representative sample, I was talking recently to a professor of history at one of the Massachusetts State Colleges, who told me that she, at the beginning of every semester, she asks her students what they think are the richest countries in the world. And for the last few years, they've been regularly saying China and India. Well, you could believe that if you read the headlines. A few qualifications may be in order. First, what about wealth or the health of the society? There's a standard measure. It's the Human Development Index. That comes out every year. The latest release, India was ranked at 134th, slightly above Cambodia, below Laos and Tajikistan. That's about where it was several decades ago. China was ranked 92nd, but that's a little uncertain since the poorer areas of China are not very accessible in this more closed society, so it could be lower. Where it's ranked, it's tied with Belize, slightly above Jordan, below the Dominican Republic and Iran. By comparison, Cuba, which has been under harsh U.S. attack for 50 years, is ranked 52nd, far above both of those. It's also the highest in Central America and the Caribbean, barely below Argentina and Uruguay. India and China also have extraordinarily high inequality, some of the worst in the world. So that means that well over 1 billion people are much farther down in the scale. Well, what about debt? Common discussion. The idea is it places the United States in thrall to China's whims. Well, apart from a very brief interlude, which is now over, Japan has been the biggest holder of U.S. government debt. At best, it's not much of a weapon for many reasons that are well understood. What about prospects? The United States has enormous advantages over both Europe and Asia. For one thing, it's unified, has a relatively homogeneous population, one language, a huge internal market and rich resources, a favorable climate, and much more. What about military power? Well, here there's just no discussion. The U.S. is about the same as the rest of the world combined in military expenditures, much more if we count intelligence, technologically far more advanced. It's the only country with hundreds of military bases, maybe 800 military bases abroad, which in fact are regularly used for the exercise of violence. So here there's no comparison. Actually, there's a more fundamental observation. The entire framework of discussion, though it's conventional, is pretty misleading. The global system is not just an interaction among states, which pursues some so-called national interest, which is abstracted from the distribution of domestic power within the society. Now, that's the way the matter is usually viewed in commentary and also in the profession, in professional international relations theory. The largely dominant views called realism views the international system roughly in this fashion. Now, there have always been critics of this view. To take one, Adam Smith. Adam Smith was concerned primarily with England, and he said that in England, the principal architects of policy, of government policy, are merchants and manufacturers, and they make sure that their own interests are most peculiarly attended to, however grievous the impact on others, including the people of England, but of course far worse, those who are subject to what he called the savage injustice of the Europeans. He's referring particularly to England and India. Well, today, pretty much the same maxim holds. It's not merchants and manufacturers. In the United States and Europe, it's primarily multinational corporations and financial institutions. The financialization of the economy has been a dramatic change in the last roughly 30 years. You go back to about 1970 in the United States, financial institutions amounted to maybe 3% of gross domestic product. Now it's approaching a third. Corresponding fact is the hollowing out of productive industry. That has huge effects on the society, on political decisions, and on the political system generally, keeping to Adam Smith's maxim. In fact, we've just seen a very dramatic illustration of that. President Obama gained office in large measure through the support of the financial industry, this huge component of the economy. They preferred him to McCain, and that was the core of his funding. And there was a payoff, huge bailouts to the financial institutions when the system collapsed. And there were actually much more important gifts that are not so much discussed. So take, say, Goldman Sachs, which is considered the top dog in the economy and the political system. It made a mint by selling mortgage-based securities and more complex financial instruments to unwitting buyers. But Goldman Sachs itself knew what it was doing. They knew that they were likely to go bust, so the company insured itself against loss by betting that what they were selling would fail, using what are called credit default swaps through the giant insurance agency, AIG, world's biggest insurance agency. Well, when the financial system collapsed, it took AIG down with it. But Goldman's boys are well placed among the architects of power, and they not only arranged for a huge bailout, but more important, they got the taxpayer to pay to save AIG from bankruptcy, buying up their collapsed loans, and that incidentally saved Goldman Sachs from the same fate. Now the CEO of Goldman Sachs, Lloyd Blankfein, is hailed as maybe the greatest genius since Einstein. Goldman is making record profits, paying out huge bonuses, and it and the other agents of the financial crisis are bigger and more powerful than ever. Well, the public may not understand the details, but they're furious. The banks that created the crisis are visibly booming. The population is suffering. Unemployment is officially at about 10%, actually much higher. In manufacturing industry, it's about at the level of the Great Depression. And those jobs aren't coming back because of the shipping of productive capacity abroad. In fact, for the last 30 years, for the majority of the population, there's been roughly stagnation, sometimes decline in the real wages, as wealth poured into very few pockets, highest in inequality in U.S. history. So there's plenty of anger. And finally, President Obama had to react to it. And he did it a couple of months ago. He reacted, first of all, with the rhetorical shift. He started talking about bad bankers and so on, and also a few policy suggestions that the financial industry didn't like. But he was supposed to be their man in Washington. They had bought him and put him in. And the principal architects very quickly sent their instructions. They announced publicly, very publicly, that they're shifting funds to the political opposition. And they poured money into a crucial election in Massachusetts, which gave the Republicans the power to block any congressional legislation. It's an interesting story in itself. And Obama got the message within days. Within days, he informed the business press that bankers, I'm quoting him now, are fine guys. He singled out for praise the chairs of J.P. Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs, the two biggest players, and he assured the business world, as he put it, that I, like most of the American people, don't begrudge people success or wealth. He's referring to the huge bonuses and profits that are infuriating the public. That's part of the free market system, Obama continued. not inaccurately as free markets are interpreted in state capitalist doctrine. It's a very revealing snapshot of Smith's maxim in action. Well, with Adam Smith's crucial corrective in mind, let's take another look at the global system and see what's happening to it. There is a real shift of power across the world, namely from the workforce to transnational capital, and China does play a big role in it. It's basically the assembly plant for a regional production system. Japan, Taiwan, other Asian economies export high-tech parts and components to China, and China assembles them and exports them using its advantages of extremely cheap and highly repressed labor and land. There's much concern about the trade deficit with China, which is U.S. trade deficit, which is in fact huge and growing, but there's less attention to the fact that there's a compensating factor. The trade deficit with Japan and the rest of Asia have sharply declined as the new regional production system takes place. And U.S. manufacturers are following the same course. They're providing parts and components for China to assemble and export back to the United States often. For the financial institutions and the retail giants and the ownership and management of manufacturing industry, and the sectors closely related to this nexus of power, it's heavenly. And it's also well understood. So the head of the very influential Sloan Foundation, Ralph Gomery, testified before Congress a couple of years ago, and he explained that, as he put it, in this new era of globalization, the interests of companies and countries have diverged in contrast to the past. What is good for America's global corporations is no longer necessarily good for the American people. Just take one striking illustration. Take IBM, peak of the computer industry. Today it employs about 400,000 people in its facilities in the United States and its subsidiaries abroad. By now, employees within the United States have declined to about 30%. Many of the employees here are informed that they have to go abroad if they want to keep their jobs. Well, that's fine for IBM owners and directors, but it's grievous for the country, as Adam Smith put it. And it's worth adding that IBM became the global giant in computing, in large measure thanks to the munificence of the U.S. taxpayer, who substantially funded the core of the IT revolution and most of the rest of the high-tech economy. But business is not philanthropy. Corporations are dedicated to maximizing profit and market share. In fact, that's a legal obligation for management. So if it's not good for the country, it's too bad. While China became the world's assembly plant, the Chinese workers are suffering along with the rest of the global workforce. That's just as we would anticipate in a system that's designed to concentrate wealth and power and to set working people in competition with one another worldwide. Worldwide, the share of workers in national income has been declining, but dramatically so in China, maybe more than anywhere else or close to it, which is also leading to growing unrest in this highly inegalitarian society, one of the most inegalitarian in the world, and capable of considerable violence to suppress dissent. Well, there's a good deal more to say about all of this, but just to summarize with a few salient points from a much more complex reality, there are indeed very important shifts in global power. And if we escape from the doctrinal framework, we can see what they are. There's a shift from the general population worldwide to the principal architects of the global power system. That's pretty much as what any rational person would expect, particularly when in an era of, referring now to the West, particularly the United States, an era of large-scale depoliticization, undermining of functioning democracy, Where it goes from here depends on how much the great majority is willing to endure.